The veiled throne on the golden planet Zhara, every building shone like fire under two suns. The people there were tall, colorful aliens with sharp eyes and ancient rules. One rule stood above all: no one could bond with the princess unless they married her without seeing her face. For years, suitors from across the galaxy came, but when they heard the rule, they refused. Some were scared. Others said it was madness. Stories whispered in the wind her face was cursed, or maybe she wasn't even real. Still, the princess waited behind her silver veil. Inside the royal court, the king of Zhara sat on a high crystal throne. His face was old and tired. He looked at his guards and asked again, "No new suitor today?" One guard stepped forward. "No, my king." They all refused. The king sighed. "Then she will grow old behind the veil, unbonded and unloved." But just then a voice spoke from the back of the hall. "I will bond." Everyone turned. A lone man stood tall. He was a human. His skin was light brown, his eyes calm but sharp. His name was Daniel Cross, an ambassador from Earth. "You don't know the risk," one noble said. Daniel smiled. "I don't need to." The king raised his hand. "You understand the law? Once the bond is accepted, it cannot be undone. You may not see her face until the bond is complete." "I understand." The hall fell silent. No one had ever gone this far. Moments later, the princess entered. She wore a long, dark blue robe that shimmered like stars. A silver veil covered her face, hiding everything but her glowing purple eyes. She walked slowly toward Daniel and stopped, just a few feet away. "You would bond with someone you cannot see?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Daniel looked at her without fear. "I've met many with beautiful faces and ugly hearts, but your heart, it speaks through your voice." The princess blinked, surprised. No one had spoken to her like that before. She turned to the king. "I accept the bond." Gasps filled the court. The nobles whispered in shock. The king stood. "Let it be written. The human has accepted the unseen. Let the bonding trials begin." That night, Daniel was taken to a private chamber. It was filled with alien scrolls, glowing stones, and air that smelled of metal and flowers. A royal servant came in quietly. "You are brave," she said. "Or foolish." "Maybe both," Daniel replied with a grin. She handed him a book. "These are the rules of the trials. You must pass them to complete the bond. Others have tried, all failed." "Did they fail because of the trials or because of fear?" Daniel asked. The servant paused. "Both." Meanwhile, the princess stood alone on her balcony, looking at the twin moons. She held something in her hand, an old earth music box. She turned the key and soft music played. "I remember this tune," she whispered. She looked at the stars. "You were the boy who gave me this, weren't you?" Her eyes became soft. Back in his room, Daniel sat near a glowing stone and opened the book. He read about the trials. Trial of honor. He must defend her name from insult. Trial of truth. He must speak only what is in his heart. Trial of choice. He must decide between power and love. He closed the book and leaned back. "I didn't come here to play games," he said to himself. "I came because something in her voice told me she's more human than alien." Suddenly, he felt a strange energy in the room. He turned and found a folded cloth on the table. It was a scarf from Earth. He picked it up. How? He looked out the window. Far above the court, in her tower, the princess was watching him from behind her veil. Their eyes met, and though no words were spoken, something had begun. Whispers behind the veil. The candle in her chamber flickered once, then died. Princess Elira sat still in the dark, her silver veil resting lightly on her lap. She didn't light the flame again. Instead, she listened. Down the long marble halls of the royal palace, voices traveled like ghosts. The nobles were angry. They whispered her name with poison in their tongues. "The human is a fool. He will bring shame to the royal bloodline. Why did she accept him so fast? But the princess smiled behind her veil. For the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen more than mystery. He had seen courage. She whispered, "Daniel." Meanwhile, Daniel walked alone in the palace garden under the twin moons. Strange glowing plants bloomed around him. The air was thick with the smell of alien spice. But his mind was sharp. He knew he was being followed. His foot slid slightly on the soft stone path. He turned just as two tall alien men in royal armor stepped from the shadows. "You don't belong here," one of them growled. "I do now," Daniel replied. One guard moved closer. "You bonded with her, without seeing her face. Either you're mad, or you're hiding something." "I came with nothing to hide," Daniel said calmly. "But maybe you are." That insult hit hard. The taller one grabbed Daniel's arm. In one smooth move, Daniel twisted free and stepped back. His hand hovered near his belt where a small blade sat hidden. But before the fight could begin, a sharp sound rang out from the garden wall. It was a soft chime, a warning signal. The guards froze. From the shadow of a nearby tree, a cloaked figure appeared and threw a small object toward Daniel. He caught it. It was a silver moonflower, a rare symbol from the royal court, and its petals glowed softly. The guards paled. "Who gave you that?" one whispered. Daniel looked at them with a slight smile. "The one whose face none of you have earned the right to see." The guards backed away. He was no longer just a human guest. He was now under royal protection. That night the princess sent her most trusted servant to Daniel's chamber. She brought a folded message sealed with the royal crest. He opened it carefully. It read, "Come to the old music hall. Midnight. Alone." Daniel frowned. The music hall hadn't been used in decades. Still, he dressed in silence and slipped out. The music hall was dusty and silent, filled with strange instruments and cracked tiles. Moonlight fell through broken windows. And there, she stood, the princess, veil still covering her face, waiting in the center of the room. "You came," she said softly. "Of course," Daniel said. "You called." She took a step forward. "There are things you must know, before the court turns you into something you're not." "I'm listening." She reached into her sleeve and pulled out a small round box. She wound it. It played the same earth melody from his childhood. Daniel's eyes widened. "That song, I gave it to a little girl once. She was injured in a crashed ship. I never learned her name." The princess nodded slowly. "That girl was me." Daniel stood frozen. You remember me?" "I never forgot," she said. "Your kindness saved me. I was taken to this world after that. But I never stopped watching your world from afar. You knew me all along. I knew your soul. And when I heard your voice in the court today, I knew my past had returned." Daniel stepped closer. "Why hide it from me?" Her voice trembled. "Because if you saw what I've become, you might not love what I am." He shook his head gently. "That's not how humans love." There was silence. Then she held out her hand, but didn't remove the veil. "I want to trust you, but the court is not ready for this bond." "Then let them try to stop us," Daniel said, stepping closer. Their fingers touched, and a bright light burst from between their hands, the sacred mark of an accepted bond. Far away, alarms began to ring. Someone had seen them. The game had just changed. Trials of blood and honor blood stained the stone floor before sunrise. It wasn't Daniel's, but it was a message. He stepped over the crimson line just outside his chamber, where a strange alien symbol had been drawn. He didn't know the language, but he understood the warning: leave now, or die. Guards arrived moments later but said nothing, just erased the mark and walked away. Daniel realized something important in that moment. No one here truly expected him to survive. Across the palace, inside a circular hall of mirrors and flame, the council gathered. The Grand Advisor, an old alien with skin like cracked gold, slammed, his staff on the ground. "We cannot allow this human to complete the bonding trials. It is an insult to royal blood." The king raised an eyebrow. He accepted the challenge. "The law is sacred. The law is ancient," the advisor shouted, "and meant for our kind, not him." But then, a voice cut through the room. "I will decide if he is worthy." The princess had arrived. Every noble turned. She still wore her veil, but her presence silenced them like thunder. Even the king bowed slightly. "Let him face the trial of blood," she said. "Let us see if courage flows through a human heart." That afternoon, Daniel was led to the trial grounds. The arena was carved into the mountain itself. Black stone, walls reached high into the sky, and crowds of alien spectators filled the edges, whispering and waiting. The trial of blood was not just a fight. It was a tradition older than the stars. Daniel's opponent would be chosen by the council, and they chose Korlax, a beast-like alien warrior with 6 arms, glowing red skin, and a cruel smile. When Daniel stepped into the arena, Korlax laughed. "You bleed easy, little Earthman." Daniel didn't respond. He looked toward the highest balcony. The princess was there, hidden behind sheer curtains. "I'm not here to bleed," he muttered. "I'm here to earn her." The gong rang. Korlax charged, heavy and fast like a thunderstorm. Daniel barely dodged the first strike, rolled and slid under a sweeping claw. The ground cracked where Korlax's fist hit. He moved like a monster, but Daniel moved like a soldier. He didn't fight with power. He used his speed. He used the arena. He let the alien burn energy, while he stayed just one breath ahead. The crowd began to murmur. The human wasn't falling. He was thinking. At one point, Korlax lifted a stone from the ground and hurled it like a cannonball. Daniel ducked, and the stone smashed a column behind him. Daniel had no choice. He ran straight at the beast. Korlax roared with laughter. "Fool!" But Daniel dropped low, slid between the alien's legs, then turned and stabbed a pressure point behind his knee. Korlax stumbled. Daniel climbed onto his back, placed the blade at the joint of his neck, and said one word: "Yield." Silence. Then Korlax dropped his weapon. "I yield." The crowd erupted into chaos. Cheers, confusion, outrage. No one had ever expected the human to win. But he did. Without rage. Without bloodlust. He won with honor. From above, the princess watched with her hand pressed to her chest. "He didn't fight to survive," she whispered. "He fought for me." Later that evening, the princess entered her private garden. She thought she was alone, but Daniel was already there, sitting near the glowing flowers. She paused. "You shouldn't be here." He looked up, tired but calm. "Neither should love, but here it is anyway." She walked closer. "Why didn't you kill him when you had the chance?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "Because I wanted to win your people's respect, not their fear." She was silent for a long time. Then softly she said, "Tomorrow is the trial of truth. It's the hardest of all. I'm not afraid." "You should be," she whispered, "because the truth might destroy everything." Far from the garden, in a secret chamber beneath the palace, the Grand Advisor stood before a dark mirror. Inside the mirror's surface swirled images of Earth and the human boy Daniel once was. "He has seen too much," the advisor hissed. "He knows her past, and he is unlocking hers." A shadowy voice replied from the mirror, "Then it is time for the lies to begin." The Forbidden Room. There was a door beneath the palace that didn't exist on any map. No one spoke of it. No one dared to go near it. But tonight, Daniel stood in front of it. It was tall, dark, and sealed with strange glowing symbols. The walls around it pulsed with quiet energy, like the door was alive. He had followed a whisper through the halls, a whisper only he could hear, It sounded like the princess's voice, soft and distant as if echoing from the past. "Find the room, Daniel, before the truth is lost forever." And now, here he was. He placed his hand on the center of the door. It opened with a soft hiss. The chamber inside was round, lit with slow-turning lights on the ceiling. It smelled of dust and time. Along the walls were frozen holograms showing the history of the Zharan royal line. But one corner was covered with a thick black cloth. Daniel pulled it away. What he saw made his chest tighten. A young alien girl, barely alive, lay in a crash pod. Her face burned, eyes wide with fear. A human boy knelt beside her, holding her hand. Him. It was him. The scene changed. The girl was healed, but different now. Her skin shimmered, her eyes glowed violet, and her features had changed. Genetic merging, Daniel whispered. They changed her to hide something. He looked down at the old metal tag next to the projection. Project Unity, Earth-Zharan hybrid prototype. His hand trembled. She wasn't just a princess. She was an experiment. Back in her chamber, Princess Elira woke with a jolt. She had seen it in a dream, Daniel finding the forbidden room. She ran from her bed, her veil forgotten on the pillow. Her heart beat fast. She had never let anyone near that place, not even her father. But Daniel was different. He had already found what the court tried to bury. Daniel stared at another holoscreen. This one showed records of suitors from the past. All failed. Some died, but one stood out. A human pilot, David Cross. His father. His throat went dry. "My father came here before me?" Then a voice echoed behind him. He tried to save her, but failed. "You won't be so lucky." Daniel turned fast. The Grand Advisor stood there, hands glowing with dark power. "This is sacred ground," he hissed. "You were never meant to see this truth." "I came to protect her," Daniel said. "No, you came to destroy what keeps our blood pure." The advisor lifted his hand and the air shattered like glass. The fight was sudden. Energy pulses blasted from the old alien's fingers. Daniel dodged, rolled, and threw a stun disc, but it shattered midair. He reached for his hidden blade, but the advisor sent a shockwave that threw him back against the wall. "You are just a boy," he growled. "A mistake your father never should have made." Daniel's head spun. His muscles screamed in pain. But just as the advisor raised his hand for the final blow, the princess stepped between them. No more. Her voice rang like thunder, even the dark magic froze. "She knows," Daniel gasped. "She knows everything." Elira turned to the Grand Advisor. "You kept this from me. For your safety," he lied. "For your control," she corrected. She looked down at Daniel, his lip bleeding but his eyes still strong. "You saw me. Even when I was hidden," she said softly. He smiled weakly. "And I still do." They escaped the chamber together, but the princess sealed it with her handprint as they left. It would never open again. Outside, guards and nobles waited. Gasps rose from the crowd. The princess wasn't wearing her veil. For the first time, her true face was visible under the moonlight. Half Zharan, half human. Entirely royal, no one spoke. Not out of shock, but out of awe. The king stepped forward, eyes wide. "My daughter? Why now?" She raised her chin. "Because the one who accepted my soul without seeing my face deserves to see me fully." She turned to Daniel and took his hand. "I will face the trial of truth beside him." Above the palace in the sky, a shadow moved. A ship, Earth design, hidden and watching. Inside it, a figure stared at the screen. An old man. "Daniel made it," he whispered. "He's about to finish what I couldn't." Her hidden pain, she sat at the edge of the sky. Not on a throne, not in a gown, not behind a veil. Just her, Elira, the Princess of Zhara, now unveiled to her people, but more afraid than ever. The garden roof above the palace gave her the view she loved most. the twin moons kissing the horizon. But tonight their light didn't comfort her. It only reminded her of everything she was, half of one world, half of another, but belonging to neither. Behind her, footsteps. "I thought I'd find you here," Daniel said gently. She didn't turn. "You shouldn't be seen with me now," she said. "They're already calling me a mistake. You don't want that name, too." Daniel walked closer. "Then let them call me a mistake," he said. "I'll wear it like armor." She turned slowly. Her eyes, once proud and glowing, now shimmered with pain. "My people wanted me hidden because of what I am. My face, my blood, even my thoughts were controlled since I was a child. They said if anyone saw my truth, it would bring shame to the empire." Daniel knelt in front of her. "You are not shame." Her voice cracked. "You don't know the whole truth." He waited, and then slowly, she told him. She had been rescued from a crash on a barren moon. Just a little girl. Her alien features, burned, her body broken. Earth doctors saved her. But it was Zharan scientists who rebuilt her, infusing her cells with human DNA. A weapon? A symbol? Even she didn't know. "They told me I was born for unity," she said bitterly. "But they only taught me to hide. The moment I felt love, they locked me away." "And the moment you took off the veil," Daniel said, "you set yourself free." She looked up at him, and then for the first time since their bond began, she cried. Not from weakness, but from release. Down below, the royal court was divided. Some nobles demanded the bond be broken. Others were silent, stunned by the princess's beauty and the human's bravery. But in the shadows, the Grand Advisor was preparing a darker path. He approached the king in his private chamber. "She has lost her place," he said coldly. "Let us name another heir." The king, torn between duty and love, hesitated. "Give her one final trial," he said. "If she fails, she will no longer be princess." That night, Daniel found a message in his room. Not written in ink, but burned into the wall. "If she passes the trial of choice, she dies." He knew instantly. This wasn't about honor anymore, it was a trap. Later, in the hidden library, he confronted Elira. "They want you to choose between power and love," he said. "But whatever you choose, they'll twist it." She nodded. "I know." "So what will you do?" She stepped close. "What I was born to do. Break the game." The next morning, the arena was silent. Not for combat, but for judgment. The court, the king, the nobles, all present. The princess, and the we. Human stood at the center. The Grand Advisor announced, "This is the trial of choice. You, Princess Elira, must choose the crown or the bond." Everyone leaned in. If she chose the crown, Daniel would be exiled. If she chose Daniel, she would lose her title. But she stepped forward and raised her voice. "I choose truth." Gasps. "I choose to show you that love does not weaken royalty. It gives it purpose. I will not choose between who I love and what I am." She pulled Daniel beside her and held up her wrist. The bond mark glowed bright across her skin. Daniel raised his too. The same mark lit up. The people watched, as their sacred bond shined like a star. Suddenly, a shout. "No," the Grand Advisor roared. "This is treason!" He drew his weapon and pointed it at the princess. In a flash, he fired, but the blast never reached her. Daniel stepped in front. The energy bolt hit his chest and threw him back. Elira screamed. "No!" She fell to her knees beside him, blood on his shirt, smoke in the air. He coughed, smiling weakly. "Still think I don't belong here?" Her hands shook as she held him. But then something happened. The bond mark between them pulsed, bright white, and the energy from it flowed into his chest. His wounds began to close. His breath returned. The crowd watched in stunned silence. "She healed him," someone whispered. "No, their bond did." The king stood up, tears in his old eyes. "The throne is yours," he said to his daughter, "and so is your choice." The reveal before the storm. The storm was coming, not the kind that brought rain, This one came with ships, with fire, with war. But inside the royal tower, all was calm. Too calm. Princess Zhara stood before a polished glass wall, the stars stretching endlessly beyond it. Her reflection stared back at her, but it looked like someone else, stronger, sharper, freer. Behind her, Daniel was silent. He had just finished suiting up in Zharan battle armor, modified for a human body. It shimmered dark gray with gold veins pulsing softly, bonded to him by the energy from their mark. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, Zhara whispered, "They're already here." Daniel nodded. "The storm ships?" She nodded once. "Your people?" Divided. "Your heart?" She turned around. Ready. 3 hours earlier, the Grand Advisor's final act of defiance had failed. He vanished into the underground tunnels, but he left behind one message, broadcast across all outer colonies. The hybrid sits on the throne. The human sleeps in her chambers. Our empire has fallen. Rise, my warriors, cleanse the throne with fire. The broadcast reached rebel factions in orbit. Old warships, long forbidden by the peace treaty, were activated again. And now, in the sky above Zhara, they hovered like vultures. Back in the court, panic brewed. Should we send her away? Hide her again? Break the bond before they reach the palace? The king slammed his staff. No. Let the people see what true royalty looks like. He turned to Zhara and Daniel. You two will stand before them, not behind a wall, not behind a veil. Now, on the steps of the royal plaza, the entire empire had gathered, thousands of Zharans, nobles, and commoners alike. Warships burned above like cruel stars, but all eyes turned to the center platform where Zhara stepped out in full ceremonial armor, face uncovered. Beside her stood Daniel. The whispers began. She's real. She's one of us. No, she's something new. Zhara raised her hand. The crowd fell silent. My people, and for years I hid behind cloth and law. You were told to fear my blood, told to doubt my heart, but you were lied to. She turned slightly to Daniel. This human did not come to rule you. He came to remind me who I truly am. I wear no veil today, because if love makes me unworthy, then the throne was never worth having. Suddenly, warning horns sounded. From the skies, the rebel warships began to descend fast. Attack pods shot toward the plaza, shaking the ground with each impact. One pod smashed into the outer courtyard. Warriors in old armor jumped out, weapons ready. The princess didn't flinch. She whispered to Daniel, "Time to show them what love can do." The crowd screamed, running, but Daniel and Zhara stood their ground. A rebel charged at her with a burning blade, but she caught it mid-swing with one arm, flipped him over her shoulder, and disarmed him in seconds. Daniel fought at her side, his movements a mix of earth, combat, and alien precision. His armor responded to her heartbeat. Their bond was not just emotional, it was tactical. They were not just lovers, they were a force. But then, a larger attack pod crashed into the middle of the plaza. From it stepped a towering armored figure, cloaked in shadows and flame. The crowd gasped. It was Commander Vrax, the advisor's secret weapon. A warrior grown in a lab, bred to kill hybrids. He pointed at Zhara. Your throne dies with you. She stepped forward. No. My throne begins. With me. The battle that followed was like legend. Daniel fought Vrax with everything he had. But the warrior was massive, brutal, and cruel. Every blow shook the plaza. Zhara jumped in, her blade clashing against Vrax's burning staff. Still, they were losing, until something strange happened. The bond mark on their wrists began to glow. Together. Suddenly, Daniel's armor surged with new energy. Zhara's blade lit up with radiant fire. Together they struck one final blow. The ground cracked beneath Vrax. The energy from their bond exploded in a wave of light. And then, silence. Vrax fell. The crowd watched in awe as the dust cleared. 2 figures stood tall, hand in hand, bonded by love and battle. Elira raised their joined hands and said just one word: unity. In the sky above, the rebel warships began to turn. One by one, they fled. The throne remained untouched, and the veil, once the symbol of her shame, was never worn again. Love in the ashes. The battle was over, but the war inside the people had only just begun. The sun rose slowly over the burned stone of Zhara's capital. Smoke still curled from shattered towers. Rebel banners lay torn in the streets. The palace, though scarred, still stood strong, and at its heart, 2 figures walked silently through the wreckage: Princess Elira and the human, Daniel. They didn't wear crowns. They didn't carry weapons. They simply walked hand in hand through a world forever changed. Everywhere they passed, eyes followed, some filled with awe, some with fear, others with quiet wonder. A child reached out to touch Elira's glowing mark. "Are you really the princess?" She knelt, smiled gently, and nodded. "Yes." "And is he really your human?" She looked at Daniel. "Yes, he's mine, and I am his." Inside the great hall, the royal court had gathered for the final decision. The king, weary but proud, stood before his people. His crown looked heavy on his head, as if it no longer belonged there. He looked at his daughter. "You fought with your heart. You ruled with your soul. Now I ask you." He turned to Daniel. "Do you choose to stay human? To walk with her, not as outsider, but as equal?" Daniel stepped forward. "I did not come for power. I came because something about her voice long ago made me believe I had met her before. And I was right." He looked at Elira. "I will stay, not because I belong to this world, but because I belong to her." The court was still. Then the king removed his crown and placed it gently in Elira's hands. "It's yours now. For the first time in our history, the throne is ruled by love, not blood." Time passed. The palace changed. Veils were no longer required. Mixed-blood children were no longer hidden. The ancient statues that once warned against bonding outside the race, were taken down. Daniel became more than a human ambassador. He was a symbol, a bridge between 2 stars, and Elira became more than a queen. She became hope, but not all. Stories end in peace. One evening, deep in the mountains, the last of the rebel generals gathered in secret. "He still lives," one hissed. "The Grand Advisor escaped. He waits for his moment." They lit a beacon, a dark flare, into the night sky. But it was seen. From the palace tower, Elira stood alone, watching the flare fade. Daniel walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Another shadow," he said. "Yes," she replied. "But I'm not afraid." "You shouldn't be," he whispered, "because the last time shadows came, we lit the world with our bond." She smiled, leaned back into him. "And next time," she said, "we'll light the stars." That night, the royal chamber was quiet. Daniel sat by the open window, a cup of glowing tea in hand, when Elira returned. She held something wrapped in silk. "What's that?" he asked. She unfolded it slowly, the old earth music box. "It still plays," she whispered. She wound the key, and the same soft melody filled the air. The one from years ago, when she was just a little girl, alone, scared and rescued by a boy who never knew her name. "You saved me," she said softly, "before I ever wore a crown." Daniel took her hand. "And you saved me. From a life without meaning." They lay together under the twin moons, no longer hiding behind fear or blood or law. Elira rested her head on his chest, listening to the beat of his heart. Daniel closed his eyes, whispering words only she could hear. I never needed to see your face, to know you were mine. And across the stars, where legends are written in stardust and passed from world to world, a new story began to spread, the tale of the veiled princess and the human who dared to see her soul, not with eyes, but with love. The end.